There's a power in quiet that our noisy world has taught us to fear. We're told that to be heard, you must be loud. To be successful, you must be fast. To be confident, you must be the center of attention. But what if the most influential women, the ones with true, unshakable intelligence, don't play by these rules? What if their strength isn't in shouting, but in their stillness? This isn't about being meek or invisible. It's about a profound self-awareness that changes the very air you breathe. It's the quiet authority of a woman who has stopped trying to prove herself to the world, because she has finally proven her worth to herself. A woman like this isn't defined by her degrees or her arguments. She's defined by her presence. She knows that how she treats herself is the blueprint for how everyone else will treat her. This isn't a guide to being perfect or impressing anyone. This is an invitation to become aware, because once a woman understands her own patterns, how she thinks, how she feels, how she reacts, she taps into a quiet force that commands respect without ever having to demand it. If you're ready to explore that power, welcome. We're here to share wisdom that helps you reclaim your energy, master your mind, and live with purpose. Subscribe and activate notifications, because a single insight can reroute your entire journey. Let's begin. There's a vast difference between being quiet and being internally still. Many people are quiet, they don't speak, but inside, their mind is a frantic storm. It's a battlefield of anxieties, replaying past hurts, rehearsing future arguments, and desperately seeking validation. But a highly intelligent woman cultivates something far rarer: inner silence. This isn't about escaping noise. It's about ending the war within. She doesn't build walls to protect her peace. She simply learns not to open her gates to every passing conflict. Her mind becomes a sanctuary, a protected space not available for every debate, not open to every piece of gossip, not swayed by every emotional storm front that rolls in. This isn't arrogance. It's the hard-won clarity that comes from understanding a fundamental truth. You cannot calm the chaos outside by sacrificing the peace inside. She's learned, often through painful experience, that endlessly fighting to be understood, constantly justifying her feelings, and reacting to every provocation doesn't lead to resolution. It leads to burnout. In neuroscience, this is related to the concept of the brain's threat detection system. When you're constantly engaged in conflict or defensiveness, your amygdala, your brain's alarm bell, is always ringing. This floods your system with stress hormones like cortisol, which, over time, impairs the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought, emotional regulation, and wise decision-making. But by cultivating inner silence, a woman protects this vital mental real estate. She gives her mind the quiet it needs to self-regulate. And this single act is the foundation of practical emotional intelligence. It's not just a theory, it's how she lives. Picture a woman whose life is a string of reactions. A colleague makes a passive, aggressive comment, and she spends the rest of the day fuming. Her partner seems distant, and she immediately fears the worst, creating a fight out of thin air. A friend cancels plans, and she spirals into feelings of rejection. Her nervous system is in a constant state of high alert, never feeling truly safe. It's exhausting, and it makes her unpredictable. Now picture a different woman. Her colleague makes the same comment. She feels a flash of anger, but instead of reacting, she pauses. In that pause, she recognizes the comment for what it is: a reflection of their insecurity, not her value. She doesn't absorb the poison. She observes it and lets it go. She chooses a response that protects her peace, not one that escalates the drama. That is the power of inner silence. It's not passivity, it is profound strength, and it fundamentally changes how the world responds to you. There's an old Zen saying, "Don't just do something, sit there." A highly intelligent woman understands this deeply. She doesn't just experience life, she pays attention to it. She feels the subtle shifts in energy in a room. She notices the hesitation in someone's voice that betrays their confident words. She senses the unspoken truth beneath a polished surface. Because her own mind isn't a noisy chaos, she can perceive reality with stunning clarity. To others, she can seem like a mystery. Why? Because she's not driven by reaction. She doesn't need to win every argument. She doesn't show up for every drama. She doesn't feel the need to comment on every issue. In a culture that is addicted to immediate response, her thoughtful restraint is both confusing and deeply magnetic. People feel a certain calm in her presence, a sense of groundedness. This isn't just a spiritual idea, it's intensely practical. It's the difference between a relationship that self-destructs in conflict and one that deepens through understanding. There's a tale of a master negotiator who was famous for her ability to resolve high-stakes conflicts. Her secret wasn't a clever tactic. When tensions were high, she would often fall silent, sometimes for a full minute, just breathing. Her opponents, unnerved by the silence, would often start talking, revealing their fears, their needs, their bottom line. She said, "In the heat of the moment, our emotions scream. Our ego demands to be right. But wisdom whispers. I just wait for the whisper." Science backs this up. Research shows that a pause of as little as 90 seconds after an emotional trigger allows the flood of chemicals in your brain to subside. This lets your logical, rational brain, the prefrontal cortex, come back online. Just a short pause dramatically increases your odds of responding wisely instead of reacting regretfully. Highly intelligent women embody this practice, not just on a yoga mat, but in the boardroom, at the dinner table, in the middle of a difficult conversation. When challenged, they don't immediately defend. When misunderstood, they don't frantically explain. They get still. And in that stillness, their next move becomes clear. This doesn't mean they don't feel anger or hurt or fear. It means they feel it all, but they are owned by none of it. This leads to the second habit, mastering the balance between softness and steel. Our world has a cartoonish view of strength. It confuses softness with being a doormat and strength with being aggressive and unyielding. The truly intelligent woman knows this is a false choice. She has lived through the consequences of being too soft and getting walked all over. She has also tried being too hard and found herself isolated and lonely. Through deep self-reflection, she learns to wield both softness and steel not as opposites, but as two parts of a whole. She practices a form of emotional discipline, not to impress others, but as an act of profound self-respect. She understands that a burst of anger might feel powerful for a second, but it's a costly leak of her vital energy. She also knows that consistently swallowing her needs to keep the peace, forgiving too easily, and bending her own rules for others erodes her soul over time. So she discovers a new dance. When someone disrespects her, she doesn't raise her voice. She calmly removes her attention. Her silence becomes the boundary. When a loved one consistently takes her for granted, she doesn't lecture them. She simply stops over, giving. When life feels like too much, she doesn't just power through, she intentionally slows down, listens to what her body is telling her, and gives herself permission to rest. This is her steel. It's quiet, it's firm, it's unshakable. But woven into that steel is a profound softness. The softness to be vulnerable with those who have earned her trust. The softness to feel compassion without becoming a martyr. The softness to love with an open heart without losing her own center. Psychologists call this psychological flexibility. The ability to adapt to fluctuating situational demands while maintaining balance. In relationships, this quality is what builds deep, lasting trust. People, especially men, often feel safer with a woman who can feel her emotions fully without becoming a victim of them. A woman who can articulate her needs with clean clarity, not with weapons of guilt or blame. A woman who can maintain her grace even when she's disappointed. This isn't a performance, it is the signature of maturity, and it is incredibly attractive. There's a story of a woman whose partner grew emotionally distant. For a long time, she tried everything she thought she was supposed to do, pleading, demanding talks, giving him the silent treatment. Nothing worked. It was an exhausting cycle of hope and disappointment. One night, instead of repeating the pattern, she sat down and said calmly, "I love you, and it hurts that we've grown so far apart. I'm willing to work on this with you, but I'm no longer willing to do the work for both of us. My door is open, but I won't stand in the doorway begging anymore." For the first time, he didn't see an accuser or a victim. He saw a woman who was both soft and strong. Her words weren't a threat, they were a statement of fact, a boundary rooted in self-respect. He felt the steel beneath the softness, and he knew she meant it. This is the kind of woman who earns respect. Even from those who disagree with her, they know her yes is real and her no is final. Her presence isn't chaotic. Her love isn't needy. She brings a sense of calm, and people either rise to meet her level of integrity or they naturally fade away. Neurologically, this emotional regulation strengthens the prefrontal cortex, which in turn makes her even better at regulating her emotions. It's an upward spiral of self-mastery, and it starts with a simple habit before you react. Pause. Take one breath. Ask yourself, what response is most aligned with the person I truly want to be? And even if you mess up, as all humans do, you don't shame yourself. You get curious, you learn, you grow. That is wisdom in action. A woman who masters this balance is not easily manipulated. She cannot be tripped into things that violate her spirit. She cannot be provoked into saying things she doesn't mean. She moves with a quiet purpose, and this balance of softness and steel becomes the foundation of her life. There is a superpower that highly intelligent women cultivate, one that is almost invisible in a society that values speaking over listening. That power is deep observation. She has disciplined herself to notice the details, to listen to the silence between words, and to stay grounded in her own awareness while the world begs her to react. This isn't a habit born of shyness, it is a conscious choice. It is the quiet power of choosing to understand a situation fully before trying to make herself understood. An intelligent woman often watches more than she talks, not because she's empty of opinions, but because she knows most people aren't really listening. They're just waiting for their turn to speak. She has no interest in wasting her breath in that kind of exchange. Think of a woman starting a new project with a team. While others might jump in immediately, trying to prove their competence and dominate the conversation, she holds back. For the first few meetings, she listens. She observes. She notices who interrupts whom. She sees who gets defensive when challenged and who gets curious. She watches who quietly does the work and who loudly takes the credit. Within a couple of weeks, she hasn't just learned the project goals. She has mapped the invisible landscape of egos, alliances, and character. This quiet intelligence allows her to navigate with wisdom, not just ambition. So when she finally does speak, her words have gravity, not because of their volume, but because they are built on a foundation of deep, non-judgmental observation. When a woman truly sees people, their strengths, their fears, their hidden motivations, she gains a form of respect that can never be forced. Neuroscience offers a beautiful explanation for this. The act of deep, empathetic observation engages what's known as the mirror neuron system. These are brain cells that fire not only when we perform an action, but also when we see someone else perform that same action. They are the basis of empathy, allowing us to feel another person's experience. When a woman consciously trains herself to observe not just what is said, but the tone, the body language, the energy behind the words, she is effectively upgrading her intuitive hardware. This, woman's intuition, isn't magic. It's a highly refined skill of data collection and pattern recognition. So many women look back on failed relationships or friendships and admit, "I saw the red flags. I just didn't want to believe them." The partner who couldn't hold their gaze during a serious talk, the friend whose compliments always felt like a competition, the boss who was charming to superiors but dismissive to subordinates. The signs were always there, but they were ignored in the rush to be liked, to be optimistic, to avoid conflict. The highly observant woman doesn't rush. She lets the truth reveal itself. She watches how people act not just when things are good, but when they are under pressure, when their ego is challenged, when they don't get what they want. She listens with her whole being because she knows people tell you who they are in 1,000 different ways, and most of them are non-verbal. In her relationships, this habit is both a shield and a bridge. She is not easily deceived by surface-level charm. She sees the subtle inconsistencies between words and actions. She'll notice how a potential partner treats a service worker, or how they talk about people who are no longer in their life. These small data points paint a picture of their character, but she also uses this power to love more deeply. She notices when her loved one is quiet, not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. She senses when a friend is struggling, not because they say it, but because the light in their eyes has dimmed. This allows her to offer the right kind of support, not just the kind she thinks they need. Because she isn't guessing, she is present. A wise woman once said, "I don't need to ask for the truth. I just watch, and the truth introduces itself." This quiet awareness makes her magnetic. She listens in a way that makes people feel truly seen and heard. She notices the small things that reveal a person's soul. The way their voice softens when they talk about a passion. The way they light up remembering a happy memory. The way they hold tension in their shoulders. Because she sees them, people feel safe to be themselves around her. But her observation isn't just directed outward. She becomes a student of her own inner world. She observes her own triggers, her own patterns of thought, her own emotional habits. She notices when she's about to fall into an old script, like the need to please everyone, or the urge to over-explain herself, or the tendency to withdraw when hurt. And because she can see these patterns as they arise, she is no longer a prisoner to them. This self-awareness is the key to real freedom. It's the difference between saying, "This is just how I am," and "This is a pattern I am choosing to change." From this place of deep observation, another habit naturally flows: creation. A truly intelligent woman is not satisfied being a passive consumer of life, of trends, of media, of other people's opinions. She is a creator. This doesn't mean she's always painting a masterpiece or writing a novel. Creation is a mindset. She actively creates peace in her home. She creates structure in her day. She creates nourishing meals. She creates moments of intentional connection in her relationships. She creates space for her own thoughts to breathe. By doing this, she is constantly sending a message to her subconscious mind. I am the architect of my experience. I am not just a character in a story written by someone else. There's a critical difference between being in motion and taking action. Motion is mindless habit, scrolling, reacting, rushing, consuming. Action is intentional movement, reading to understand, writing to clarify, building to express, resting to restore. The woman stuck in motion is often running on empty, her sense of self shaped by whatever she last consumed. But the woman who chooses action is moving with purpose. This shift from consumption to creation is life-altering for relationships. A woman who is constantly consuming advice and seeking validation loses touch with her own inner compass. She starts outsourcing her decisions, her feelings, her very identity. But when she begins to create, she reclaims that power. Her journal becomes her most trusted advisor. Her morning routine becomes her non-negotiable sanctuary. Her silence becomes her wisest teacher. In a romantic relationship, this habit is the antidote to codependency. She doesn't look to a partner to be her source of happiness or stability. She comes to the relationship already full. She creates her own joy, so she doesn't demand it from him. She nurtures her own peace, so she doesn't blame him for her anxiety. This makes her love feel like a gift, not a transaction. There's a story of a woman who felt completely shattered after a divorce. Her entire identity had been the wife. She spent months consuming therapy, workshops, self-help podcasts. They were helpful, but she still felt hollow. One afternoon, she found her old gardening gloves. She hadn't tended her small balcony garden in years. As she started to pull weeds, to turn the soil, to plant new seeds, something inside her began to shift. The grief was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. The act of nurturing life outside of herself reminded her of the life force still within her. She later reflected, "It wasn't the garden that saved me. It was the act of creating. It reminded me that I could still bring beauty into the world, that I was more than just my pain." This is the power of creation. It's not about the final product. It's about the process. It's about engaging with life, not just enduring it. Science confirms this. Creative activities light up parts of the brain associated with self-reflection, emotional regulation, and innovative problem solving. When a woman creates, she isn't just distracting herself, she is integrating her experiences and building a stronger sense of self. This habit transforms her relationship with time. She stops feeling like life is a series of things happening to her. She becomes a co-creator with life. She doesn't just eat food, she creates nourishment. She doesn't just have a relationship, she actively contributes life and presence to it. And as she does this, her energy changes. It becomes deeply attractive. People can sense when a woman is living from a place of intention. There's a depth and a stillness to her. She doesn't scramble for attention. She doesn't engage in petty competition. She just is, and her being is more powerful than any amount of doing. But this requires discipline. It is always easier to consume than to create. It's easier to scroll than to sit in silence. It's easier to react than to reflect. The intelligent woman knows this, so she doesn't wait for inspiration to strike. She builds a rhythm. She carves out a small, sacred space in her life where creation is a non-negotiable habit. Maybe it's 15 minutes of writing each morning. Maybe it's a no screens evening once a week. Whatever it is, she commits to it. And in that commitment, she finds herself over and over again. Observation shows her the world as it is. Creation reminds her of the world as it could be. And together, they form the bedrock of a life lived on purpose. There is a quiet power in a woman who embodies her boundaries instead of just talking about them. She doesn't deliver angry speeches about her limits. She doesn't beg for them to be honored. She doesn't exhaust herself explaining why she deserves respect. Her boundary isn't a wall she angrily erects. It's the natural shoreline of her own being. Those who can respect that shoreline are welcome. Those who can't find that the tide of her attention simply recedes. A highly intelligent woman knows that boundaries are not about punishing others. They are about protecting her own energy and integrity. She has learned through bitter experience that giving to people who appreciate leads to a hollowed out soul. So her boundaries become a sacred practice, enforced not by shouting, but by unshakable consistency. When someone consistently disrespects her time, she doesn't make a scene. She just becomes less available. When someone tries to manipulate her with guilt, she doesn't argue. She simply declines to participate in the drama. In that quiet retreat, she communicates a message far more powerful than words. I value myself more than I value your approval of me. The world often mislabels women who do this. They're called cold or difficult. But this judgment misses the history behind her stance. It doesn't see the nights she cried in private, the times she bent herself into a pretzel to please others, the moments she poured out her heart to people who weren't listening. She was forged in that fire. She didn't become hard, she became clear. And clarity doesn't need to yell. In psychology, enmeshment is a state where boundaries are so blurred in a relationship that one person's identity gets lost in the other's. Many intelligent women have survived this. They have loved so hard they disappeared. And when that love wasn't met with equal respect, they were left feeling empty and foolish. But instead of letting that experience make them bitter, they let it make them wise. And with that wisdom, they began to architect a life where their boundaries were a quiet, constant reflection of their self. Worth. Consider the woman who used to be a chronic yes woman. Yes to extra projects. Yes to one-sided friendships. Yes to forgiving behavior that was never going to change. She confused self-sacrifice with love. She thought being endlessly available made her valuable. But on the inside, she was crumbling. No one saw it because she never complained until she hit burnout. It was in the profound stillness that followed her collapse that she had a revelation. No one was coming to rescue her. The life of respect and peace she craved wasn't something to be earned from others. It was something to be claimed for herself. And claiming it began with the word no. She started small. She stopped answering work emails after 7 p.m. She said no to social events that drained her. She let calls from draining friends go to voicemail. And slowly, her world began to reorganize itself around her new reality. Some people fell away, and the ones who stayed began to treat her with the respect she was finally showing herself. A woman who embodies her boundaries isn't cruel. She is simply no longer a match for dynamics that require her to abandon herself. She knows that a healthy partner won't ask her to shrink, to over-explain, or to constantly justify her needs. A healthy partner will appreciate the clarity of her rhythm. This acts as a powerful filter. People who rely on manipulation, guilt, or testing limits will find no purchase with her. She refuses to play emotional tug-of-war. She will let go of a rope, even if it hurts, because she knows that no relationship is worth the price of her own soul. There's a saying, your boundaries are a statement, not a negotiation. The intelligent woman lives this. She has nothing to prove and no one to convince. Her presence is her standard. Her absence is her consequence. But these boundaries are also internal. She sets limits on her own mind. She refuses to let it spiral into endless loops of self-criticism or replay old wounds. When she catches her thoughts drifting into old stories of not good enough, she gently but firmly tells herself, we don't live there anymore. This inner boundary is an act of self-leadership. She respects her own mental energy too much to waste it on things she cannot change. One woman shared how she used to be an expert at making excuses for other people's bad behavior. He's just stressed. She didn't mean it that way. They had a tough childhood, but she realized that by constantly creating space for their inconsistency, she was eroding her own reality. She wasn't just letting them treat her badly, she was co-signing the behavior, so she stopped. Now, when an apology isn't followed by a change in behavior, she accepts the information and adjusts her distance, not with anger, but with clarity, because she has learned that attention without respect is worthless. In a romantic relationship, a woman like this is both deeply reassuring and a little intimidating. Reassuring because her partner knows where he stands. He feels the safety of her self-respect. He knows that her love is a choice, not a need. Intimidating because she cannot be controlled or won over with cheap tricks. She will not be convinced to stay where she is not cherished. This isn't a power play, it is self-possession. She knows who she is, and she knows that anyone who asks her to betray her own soul in the name of love is not offering love at all. A woman in harmony with herself is like water. She is soft, but she can wear away stone. She doesn't fight life, she flows with it. And a crucial part of that flow is knowing when to say no, when to retreat, when to protect the sacred space that allows her to be herself. Sometimes that protection is as simple as choosing silence over arguing with someone who is determined to misunderstand you. There is a profound peace that comes from no longer needing to justify your existence. Boundaries are not built overnight. They are the result of experience, heartbreak, and the quiet, fierce decision to never, ever abandon yourself again. Her life becomes simpler. Her yes is full. Her no is peaceful. And she doesn't owe anyone an explanation for either. There's a deep elegance to a woman who treats herself with sacred dignity, not just on special occasions, but in the quiet, unseen rituals of her daily life. These are not grand gestures for an audience. They are the repetitive, loving actions she takes when she is her own sole witness. These small, consistent rituals are the very architecture of her self-worth. They are the daily, tangible proof of the value she places on herself. A highly intelligent woman knows that true confidence is not a mood. It is a result. It is the result of how she speaks to herself in the privacy of her own mind, how she nourishes her body, how she prioritizes her rest, and how she carves out moments of peace in a chaotic world. These seemingly ordinary acts are what create her. They are the soil in which her peace, her decisions, and her relationships grow. It starts from the moment she opens her eyes. A woman who is in alignment with herself does not begin her day by grabbing her phone and letting the world's anxiety flood her mind. She reaches for a moment of intention. She knows the first few minutes of her day set the energetic tone for everything that follows. So she creates a simple morning rhythm that reconnects her to herself before the world tells her who she should be. It might be just 3 deep breaths before her feet touch the floor. It might be savoring a cup of tea by a window. It might be writing 3 sentences in a journal. She does this not as a chore, but as an act of devotion to her own well-being. There's a story of a woman who felt constantly drained. Her life was a blur of demands from her job, her children, and a partner who was emotionally taxing. She felt like a ghost in her own life. A therapist gave her a simple task: for 10 minutes every morning, before anyone else is awake, do something that is purely for you. She scoffed at first. What will 10 minutes do? But she was desperate, so she tried. Just 10 minutes, sitting in a quiet corner with her journal. No phone, no demands. Within a few weeks, her entire demeanor had changed. Her external life was just as demanding, but her internal foundation had solidified. She was calmer, less reactive, and felt a quiet strength she hadn't felt in years. That tiny ritual was her anchor. This reveals a profound truth: self-respect is not built in a day, it is accumulated. It is the sum of 1,000 small acts of self-care, especially on the days you feel you don't deserve it. A woman who practices this stops looking for her worth in all the wrong places. She doesn't need constant external validation to feel beautiful, because she has already treated her body with kindness and care that morning. She doesn't need a promotion to feel worthy, because she has already kept a promise to herself, even if it was just to go for a 20-minute walk. These small, private victories compound. They become a quiet, unshakable inner fortune. And this reflects directly in her relationships. A woman who respects herself is naturally selective, not from a place of superiority, but from a place of energy conservation. She no longer has the tolerance for one-sided conversations or for people who are consistently inconsistent. She doesn't have to be rude about it. She just knows her peace and her rhythm are too precious to be sacrificed for a love that doesn't match the love she already provides for herself. Psychologically, rituals create a feeling of safety and predictability for the nervous system. When a woman has consistent, grounding rituals, like a morning walk, journaling, or a simple bedtime routine, she is sending a constant signal to her own brain. I've got you. We are safe. You are cared for. This deep sense of internal safety is what allows her to handle external chaos with grace. Think of a woman in a relationship with an unpredictable partner. One day he's loving, the next he's distant. Her mind could easily spiral into anxiety and self-doubt. But because she has anchored herself in her own consistent rituals, she doesn't disintegrate. She feels the pain of his inconsistency, but she has a safe harbor to return to. She has trained her body and mind to know what home feels like, and it's not dependent on another person's mood. Her rituals have become her home. This emotional resilience is built like a muscle, one day at a time. Her rituals become a whisper. No matter what happens out there today, I will show up for myself. One woman made a simple practice of lighting a small candle for 5 minutes every evening. It was a symbol for her, a way of bringing light back into her own space after a long day. On days she felt joyful, she lit the candle. On days she was heartbroken, she still lit the candle. On days she felt numb, she still lit the candle. That simple, consistent act became a powerful healing force. It was a daily recommitment to herself. That is the point of daily rituals. They aren't about fixing something that's broken. They are about remembering your own wholeness, your own dignity, your own sacred nature. In relationships, this is revolutionary. A woman grounded in her own rituals is not chasing highs or addicted to drama. Her inner life is already rich. She brings a calm, centered energy into her connections. She's a better listener, a more thoughtful speaker, because she isn't operating from a place of lack. She is already full, and people feel this. Her presence is grounding. A partner feels safe with her because her energy isn't frantic or needy. This also gives her the strength to walk away from what is not right for her. Not with drama, but with a quiet reverence for her own peace. She knows that being alone is not a failure, it is a return to her sanctuary. She has learned, through her rituals, how to enjoy her own company. You teach people how to treat you by the standard you set in how you treat yourself. This isn't just a nice quote, it is a universal law of human dynamics. When a woman consistently puts her own well-being last, she is teaching the world that her needs are not important. But when she consistently, unapologetically carves out space for her own peace and renewal, she teaches others that she is a woman who must be met with respect or not met at all. In the end, these rituals are a spiritual practice. They are a daily declaration. I am worthy of care. I am responsible for my own energy. And this responsibility is the ultimate freedom. Because once a woman truly claims it, she stops waiting for someone else to make her happy. She learns to create it herself, daily, with intention and with love. There is a saying that how you do anything is how you do everything. The way you make your bed, the way you drink your water, the way you walk down the street, it's all a reflection of your inner state. A woman who brings mindful presence to these small acts brings that same powerful presence to her relationships. Presence is the fruit of ritual, and deep presence is the greatest gift you can offer another human being. These daily acts are the roots of her power. When she tends to them, she flourishes. There is no one-size-fits-all ritual. For one woman, it's dancing in her living room. For another, it's silent meditation. For a third, it's walking barefoot on the grass. What matters is not the specific act. What matters is the intention behind it to return. To return to her body, to her breath, to her truth. When a woman lives this way, when her silence is sacred, her emotions are disciplined, her mind is observant, her life is creative, her boundaries are clear, and her daily life is a ritual of self-respect. She stops searching for her worth in the world. She becomes its source. She no longer asks if she is enough because her daily actions confirm that she is. She no longer fears being left because she knows she will never leave herself. Her presence becomes her message. Her energy becomes her boundary, and those who are privileged enough to walk beside her must learn to treat her with the same integrity and respect that she shows herself every single day. That is the true mark of a highly intelligent woman.